The Rebbetzin informs me that I've been speaking and it's been on mute. Let's make sure that that is not the case. I think, okay, we're good to go. So we'll start from the top once again. So, ladies and gents, welcome. We are talking about Taras Mishpacha Refresher Course Part 2, removing the status of Niddah, BEDIKOS, SHIVA, Neki'im and Mikvah. Once again, this is a crash course, which means that we are not going to be comprehensively covering all of the details of Hilchos Niddah and Hilchos Mikvah and the BEDIKOS and SHIVA Neki'im, but this is a refresher for people that, Baruch Hashem, have had lots of hopefully wonderful life circumstances that have given a reprieve from some of the Hilchos Niddah. And this is an opportunity to re-engage with these halachas, and to be able to understand them, and to remind ourselves of the basics so that we know where and when to ask questions. I want to thank everybody once again for joining us, and apologies that the mute was on beforehand. And we are going to jump right into it. In order to remove the Niddah status, there are three major things that have to happen before going to the mikveh. The first is Hefsek Tahara, the second is Shiva Neki'im, 7 clean days, and the third is wearing white. And we are going to discuss those three areas of halacha in the up and coming minutes. Hefsek Tahara. So the Hefsek Tahara quite literally means Hefsek, stop, Tahara, impurity, which means, for all intents and purposes, that a woman does an internal check, a bedika, with a white bedika cloth, taking careful care to make sure that she is checking internally appropriately and cautiously and thoroughly, and that comes out clean. At that point in time, she has performed a Hefsek Tahara, and then and only then can Shiva Neki'im begin, which means, this question comes up all the time, Hefsek Tahara happens on day 0. That's the simplest way to think about it, which means that if you do a Hefsek Tahara on Sunday afternoon, then you will count 7 clean days that will begin from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, Sunday, and then on the following Sunday night, right, that will be the opportunity, the earliest opportunity to go to the mikveh. Now, at what point in time can a woman do a Hefsek Tahara? So this is an important question to ask. Most women have a menstrual flow that ranges somewhere between 3 and 5 days, more or less. That's the average. Very rare that a woman is going to see blood and then stop seeing blood the very next day. With a normal period, that's not regular in terms of the biology. Most of the time, women will be able to stop seeing blood after day 3 or 4, sometimes day 5 of the beginning of their period. So if their period began on a Sunday, so the earliest opportunity to do a Hefsek Tahara would be 5 days thereafter. So period began on Sunday, then it would be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You could do a Hefsek Tahara on Thursday and begin counting Shiva Neki'im from that Friday morning. That would result in a going to mikvah on the following Thursday night, which means end to end for Ashkenazim, this works out to be monthly 12 days, 7 days of Shiva Neki'im plus 5 days before Shiva Neki'im can begin. Sfardim, those that can get a Hefsek Tahara on day 4, have the rights to do so. And this is a machlokas between Ashkenazim and Sfardim, which we are not going to get into the eccentricities of now. But Sfardim will have a 11-day period of separation in total, whereas Ashkenazim will normatively have a 12-day period of separation. All things going well and appropriately in both cases. Now, a question came in a little bit earlier during the week on the brswest.net Mishpacha anonymous question forum, and I encourage you, if you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat on the live stream, or alternatively to put them on brswest.net/mishpacha and ask questions anonymously. Somebody wanted to know, is it true, or she has heard before, that there was a time and a place in the history of the Jewish people that women went to the mikveh after 7 days from day 1 of their period? And the answer to that question is yes. The answer to that question is yes, and we'll explain very, very, very briefly. The Torah differentiates between two different kinds of blood flow. There is what we refer to as Niddah and what we refer to as SHIVA. Niddah is menstrual blood flow. SHIVA is non-menstrual blood flow. Now, it seems to be that there was a time pre-Mishnaic era, we're talking over 2,000 years ago, that the differentiation between these two things was well known and well understood from women to women. And to that end, women that knew that they were exclusively experiencing a period without any other kind of blood flow that might be irregular at any point in time, did not have to wait until until they had a half sektara before counting 7 clean days. It was simply 7 days after their period. That would be regular Niddah. And then SHIVA would be counting clean days and then being able to go to the mikveh. Our normative practice today, and we're not going to get into all of the details, our normative practice today is to assume that every time a woman has a menstrual cycle, that it could be both Niddah and SHIVA, and to that end, we take the stringencies of both of these. Now, there's a long history to this, which is not for the crash course, but what I will point out, and this is essential to understand in the way that poskim and community rabbis understand Hilchos Niddah today, is that much of what we understand of Hilchos Niddah today is a series of stringencies. Husband and wife living together while the status of Niddah is in effect is potentially risking a chiyuv kares, which is of the most severe issues that the Torah discusses. And to that end, Chazal and Jews in practice, Jewish men and women over the centuries, our ancestors did as much as they possibly could to avoid finding themselves in situations where that would be somewhat contentious, problematic, or questionable. As an orientation, we're going to discuss this in greater detail next week. It's worth noting that because much of our Hilchos Niddah today is stringencies that are built upon stringencies to a significant extent, we take as many leniencies as we can in areas that we can. And that's important to understand because poskim today are well aware of the fact that we are living in a exceedingly hypersexualized environment, and therefore, whichever ways that we can permit husband and wife to be together, rabbis and Chazal and poskim today attempt to do so. And we'll talk about how that comes out in practice both this week and next week. But back to the halachas of hefsektara, the most important time for you to remember with regards to a hefsektara is that it needs to be before sunset. Before sunset, meaning before the sun, the big ball in the sky, dips below the horizon. You can take a look at that on any Zmanim calculator. You can take a look at that using weather information. You can even ask Siri what time sunset will be today, and that's a very, very helpful thing to be able to do when you're in the car on the way home from somewhere and you don't know if you are going to have time. Being able to ask that to your smartphone is a useful feature to know about, and most of the time the Weather Bureau is basically exactly the same as what the Zmanim apps will be with regards to sunset, because that is not a halachic definition, that is the sun dipping below the horizon. While there are machloksim in exactly how many degrees below the horizon, that's not for now. Hefsektara has to be before sunset. It is useful, it is exceedingly useful to have a bath or a shower before a hefsektara. This is particularly important for women that are not entirely sure if they're going to get a clean hefsek or not. To have a bath or shower and clean the area well beforehand means that you can be reasonably certain that when you do a hefsektara, if there's no blood, then you are good. Because if there is blood, maybe it was there from yesterday. Maybe there was some blood that was there since this morning. So being able to do a hefsektara means that you know that this is clean without any doubt. Bath and shower beforehand is a useful practice. We'll talk about one other useful practice in a moment. Now, many women have the practice, and this is recorded in the Shulchan Aruch, of doing a moch dachuk, to remove all doubt, which is to insert a bedika cloth before sunset, to leave it in for the duration of shkia, which, depending on where you live in the world, could be anywhere between 12, 13, 15, 17, 20 something minutes, until after the beginning of nightfall, until after Tzesek Kochavim. And then that would remove all doubt. You'll know with certainty that if that is clean, then you are for sure clean. Rav Willig, when we were learning Hilchos Niddah, told us that he does not recommend that in any circumstances where there might be some level of irritation or discomfort, because it is not strictly necessary in order to achieve tahara. It's not strictly necessary. It is a advisable chumrah, and those that have this custom should absolutely continue to do so, unless it is causing some level of discomfort and potentially some level of scratching or scabbing or irritation, which could lead to not getting a hafsek tahara if the moch dachuk is left in. So if you are experiencing some level of discomfort with that, please feel free to reach out to me or to any other local Orthodox competent halachic authority to be able to establish whether or not you should have a moch dachuk, do a moch dachuk, and if you are having issues with it, continue with the moch dachuk. Okay. The Shiva Neki'im begin once the hafsek tahara has been achieved, which means hafsek tahara has happened before sunset on day 0. That night already begins Shiva Neki'im. Shiva Neki'im has pretty much some very, very simple guidelines, which is that on each day of the 7 clean days, a woman is obligated to check herself, to do an internal check, a bedika chayrin uzdakin is the language of the Shulchan Aruch, and all the nooks and crannies to make sure that there is no blood present. And that needs to happen, says the Shulchan Aruch, twice per day. Now, once again, twice per day is a maximum. The twice per day is the maximum, and no woman should ever be doing more than twice per day. It is absolutely okay to do once a day lechatchila, and this Rav Willig once again pointed out to us when we were learning Hilchos Niddah that once a day is certainly acceptable in accordance with the rules and guidelines of the Shulchan Aruch. A woman that is experiencing discomfort or is concerned in any way, shape, manner, or form that doing additional bedikas might cause any level of irritation, once a day is sufficient. Once a day for each day of Shiva Neki'im is absolutely sufficient. The absolute minimum in order to be able to go to mikveh is a hafsek tahara on day 0, a clean bedika on day 1, and a clean bedika on day 7. That is the absolute minimum, which means that if you forgot to do bedika on day 2, on day 3, on day 4, and day 5, if you forgot to do a bedika, certainly if you forgot to do one of the 2 bedikas, that is totally okay. Preferably to do a bedika each of the 7 clean days. But if you forgot to do a bedika on any one particular day, that's okay. You don't need to then resume or begin counting again. You resume counting that as a clean day. So you did a hafsek tahara on day 0, you did a bedika on day 1, you did a bedika on day 2, and then it was Erev Shabbos and you forgot to do bedika on day 3, and then it was Shabbos, you forgot to do bedika on day 4, and now you don't know, and then you're figuring out, okay, tomorrow, Sunday would be day 5, but I didn't do bedika for the last 2 days. What am I supposed to do? Do a bedika on day 5, day 6, day 7. Without a bedika on day 7, you cannot go to mikveh. Without a bedika on day 1, you cannot go to mikveh, and without a hafsek tahara, you cannot begin Shiva Neki'im. So there are a number of potential scenarios of ways that this can go right and ways that this can go wrong. It is never, ever, 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 ever advisable, assuming everything is healthy and well, to only do bedika on day 1 and day 7. Why? Because if you forget accidentally to do the bedika on day 7, well, now you don't have a day 1 anymore, because the very next day would be day 8, which means that you do not have a 7-day period with day 1 and day 7 both having a bedika. You don't have 7 clean days. So what's missing is Shiva Neki'im, 7 days consecutively that are clean. So relying on only day 1 and day 7 is a precarious situation to be in, because if you forget to do day 7, you're in big, big trouble. Don't find yourself in that situation. Do a bedika every day. Now, there are certain circumstances that women are having a very hard time at becoming tahora, getting clean bedikas, in which case, once again, speak to a local Orthodox competent halachic authority. There are leniencies that can be applied in all of these situations. There are leniencies that can be applied. Again, lechatchila, ideally, we don't rely on these leniencies unless there is good reason to do so. But if there is reason to do so, even if you're not sure if it is a good reason to do so, it is always a good idea to ask. Which brings me on to the third point on the slide, which is if you see something that looks red, don't assume that red is red. Not all reds are reds. Rabbanim are trained to be able to understand what exactly constitutes a bedika that is tameh, that is problematic, and not all reds are reds. Not all reds are necessarily problematic, and when you see a splotch of something on a bedika cloth, don't automatically assume that all of it is problematic, that some of it is problematic, that you can see where it is a problem or not. Bring it to a competent halachic authority to be able to ascertain and to determine whether or not this is a problem. We have a running joke amongst Rabbanim that with the chassan and kala, usually what ends up happening within the first couple of days or weeks of marriage, when the first Hilchos Niddah questions come up, the wife wants to be as machmir, as stringent as possible. The husband wants to be as mekel, as lenient as possible, and the rabbi wants to be even more lenient. Meaning, both the chassan and kala have studied Hilchos Niddah. Husband and wife have learnt a little bit of Hilchos Niddah, but Rabbanim are trying as much as possible, practically, to ensure that husband and wife can be able to live with intimacy and with touch as much as is halachically possible. So always ask the question and don't assume, I forgot a day, or I think that it's red, or I'm not sure. Ask the questions, ask the questions, ask the questions. Those that are comfortable reaching out to a rabbi should absolutely do so. And in our community, those that do not feel comfortable reaching out to a rabbi, reach out to a rebbitzin. In our community, Baruch Hashem, we have many, many rebbitzins, Rebbitzin Blumenthal, certainly, that is more than happy to field your questions and to pass on any areas of concern or questions without revealing who you are and keeping everything discreet. Discretion is the name of the game when it comes to Taras Mishpacha and Hilchos Niddah, and Rabbanim are good at this. So don't worry, your situation will not necessarily be disclosed unless there is pressing circumstances to do so. And in general, as awkward as you feel, the same way that you're comfortable speaking to your doctor about all sorts of wonderful and beautiful things that go on in the human body, Rabbanim are well equipped and trained to deal with these similar questions. With regards to wearing white underwear, we'll define two very basic categories here. The internal check that a woman does during the Shiva Neki'im, if something red is there and problematic, that is a bedika. We assume that that would be tameh if it would be red and it would be a bedika. Any drop of blood or anything else that you see on your underwear is not a bedika. It's not a bedika, it's a kesem, which means that it is derabanan, as we discussed last week. It is rabbinic in nature, which means that we have the authority to be able to be as lenient as possible in most spots on underwear questions, which means that if it is smaller than the shear of a gris, it's smaller than about yay big, you don't have to be concerned about it. If it is on something disposable, if it would be on a pad, then in many cases you do not need to be concerned about it. And because of that, if a woman is concerned, whoa, hold up a second, I went to the restroom and I saw like a little bit of something, but it's tiny on my underwear. Ooh, but if I keep on wearing this pair of underwear, maybe it will be as large as a sheer gris. The spot is going to get larger and that is going to be problematic. You have full rights to change your underwear so that you don't have the accumulated amount on one piece of cloth. Now, it is essential to understand that in today's day and age, all poskim agree that you should not be doing any additional checks. Do one a day, maybe two a day, if such is your practice, and do not do any more. Don't do any more. Don't check because you're curious. Don't check because you want to find out what's going on. Don't look, right? Don't look, don't see, don't tell. You don't need to. You don't need to do any of that. Shulchan Aruch has told us exactly what is necessary. More than that is not necessary, and nobody needs to be concerned with those things. Feel free, even during Shiva Neki'im, if you are concerned, to go to the bathroom with the lights off, to wipe and not look at any of those things, to do the bedikas that are prescribed by the Shulchan Aruch. No more is necessary. There are rare occasions that women are having a difficult time getting a clean bedika. that poskim would advise not to wear white underwear. Those circumstances do exist, and if you are having a difficult time getting a clean bedika, a clean shiva nekiim, ask the question. It will be valuable and helpful to you. Once shiva nekiim has been completed, and this is important to understand, once shiva nekiim has been completed, we assume that the woman now can go to mikveh. So, Hefsek Tara has occurred, shiva nekiim now begin day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, and on the evening following day 7, she can go to the mikveh. Mikveh is done after nightfall, which means after Tzeitzei Kochavim, like whatever time it says on the app for Shabbos times. So whenever Shabbos comes out, that's when we will begin to go to the mikveh. In terms of the timing of that, it is worth noting, and it is important to note, that sometimes, certainly in this mishigas called COVID, a woman will do shiva nekiim and then not be able to go to the mikveh. Either she'll be sick, or she'll have symptoms, or the mikveh will close, or something is going on. What does she do then? So at that point in time, the shiva nekiim have been completed. She can go to the mikveh at any point in time. At any point, meaning any night subsequent. So the night following day 7, or day 8, or day 9, or day 10. During that period of time, she no longer needs to wear white underwear. She does not need to do any BEDIKOS. This is important to note. This sometimes happens. You're somewhere where there isn't access to the mikveh, or you can't get to the mikveh, or something else happens. So you finish your shiva nekiim, stop wearing white underwear, stop doing BEDIKOS, go to the mikveh the following night. But there's no need to do any further BEDIKOS. Again, don't do more than what is necessary. That can only cause problems. There is nothing to gain by doing so. We'll talk about Erev Shabbos issues in just a few moments, but before getting into the mikveh, the most important thing to do is to remove any Khachitos. Any Khachitos means anything that would come between a woman's body and the waters of the mikveh. In order to achieve tahara, one needs to dunk in the mikveh completely, be fully immersed, all of oneself, all together at once. Now, what this means practically speaking, most women are fairly familiar with this, is combing out hair, removing nail polish, trimming nails, cleaning underneath the nails, and making sure that nothing else is stuck anywhere on a woman's body. Now, as far as the halacha is concerned, on a biblical level, we are concerned for something that is a roiv and makpid. What that means is something that covers the majority, and this is up to debate, either the majority of the person or the majority of a particular limb of a person, and we'll differentiate between that in a moment, and makpid, something that you would preferably not want to have there. On a rabbinic level, we are stringent that applies to things that are either rov or makpid. What that means is that we try to remove everything that is stuck to a body in general. The question comes up from time to time, what about like gel nail polish? I just got a manicure and then I found out that I'm going to the mikveh. So practically speaking, we advise as much as possible, barring some rare extenuating circumstances. Talmidim knocking at the window. Baruch Hashem. Barring some rare and extenuating circumstances, to remove all nail polish, manicures, pedicures, all the rest of it, because with the understanding that the nail is a unique part of the body. If the majority of it is covered up, that is a rov. That could be potentially problematic. Questions that arise, for example, with regards to people that have like an insulin patch or connector, or whatever that is on their torso that they want to be able to keep there. So those kinds of things everything is worth asking a question. In certain circumstances, that might be okay to keep on, and certain circumstances that might not. It is always worth asking the question with particularities of situations. Now, going into the mikveh means that what needs to be done is to bath and shower and be totally clean beforehand, totally clean before getting into the mikveh, to make sure that there is nothing, hair is combed out, nothing is present. Hold on one moment. My apologies. Bathing and showering to remove all Khachitos, all things that are in between the body and the waters of the mikveh. That includes brushing teeth and flossing teeth, and taking out any kinds of gels or cosmetics, any kinds of conditioners and makeup, to make sure that all of that is removed. Dunking in the mikveh is done simultaneously. Every single part of the body needs to go underwater, which is why the Shulchan Aruch points out that a tevelas beina levein atzma, a woman that goes to the mikveh just by herself, we cannot assume that she is tahora, because it is difficult to ascertain that everything went under the water at the same time. That's the job of the mikveh lady, to make sure that everything went under the water at the same time. The minhag is to dunk 3 times, which again is the minhag. Once is enough, al pi din, but to dunk 3 times is the minhag, making a bracha before going into the mikveh, because this is a mitzvah. It is a mitzvah for a woman to go to the mikveh and become tahora in order to be able to be intimate with her husband. Now, maintaining privacy is an important consideration. As much as possible, we don't announce that we're going to the mikveh. That's not something that should be public knowledge necessarily. These are intimate matters between husband and wife, and to that end, all discretion is used as much as possible, to be able to somewhat obscure these kinds of things from other members of family and from friends and colleagues. And most women and men figure out ways of describing where mommy is going, or where their wife is going, or where they are going, on the way to the gym and back from the gym, or whatever the case may be, to be able to make sure that privacy and tahara in the taharas mishpacha is maintained. It's important to point out that this extends to the way that shuls are built and parking spots are allocated outside of the mikveh. The minhag at the BRS mikveh, although this is sometimes not upheld by men in the community, and we should call out that this is problematic, is that all of the spots in front of the mikveh are not used for men coming to be mispalel, or even women that are coming to be mispalel. They are exclusively reserved for the women that are dashing in and out of the mikveh building, so that it does not have to be that women are walking into the mikveh building in full view of other people that might or might not be in the parking lot. Discretion and kavod habrios being essential here. We should also point out that while this is all true, Rav Moshe's point that we made last week about not needing to obscure and hide things unnecessarily, we are proud Jews. We are very happy to be keeping the mitzvahs of Hashem, and there is no need for us to go out of our way to obscure the fact that we keep taharas mishpacha at all. Usually, by the time kids are teenagers, certainly by the time daughters are teenagers, they kind of figure out that once a month, mommy goes somewhere. And those questions become fairly obvious. And there's no need to lie and falsify what is going on. That is part of chinuch, part of education as well. And with that, we conclude our part two of our Hilchos Niddah Taharas Mishpacha crash course. And I want to thank everybody for joining. Once again, apologies that it was muted at the beginning. The link that this is streaming to on YouTube will be available in a couple of moments for you to be able to share, for people to be able to watch the full recording. Any further questions at brswest.net/mishpacha. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, next week we will be talking about questions of marital intimacy, questions of what is permissible and what is not permissible within the context of halacha in the bedroom. This will be streamed live, but the recording will not be available in perpetuity for the sake of maintaining taharas mishpacha and privacy. But those that would like that I recommend those that would like to be part of it to be there streaming online next week at 8 p.m. And I will see you then. Have a wonderful evening and beautiful Shabbos.